Rita Dove once said that poetry is language at its most distilled and most powerful. I don't know about you, but for me, novels and fact books make me laugh and teach me things, but it's poetry that keeps me sane. I lucked out recently and got to ride with some of the flyest poets Britain has to offer. Carol Ann Duffy and her friends Jackie Kay, Imtiaz Darker, Gillian Clarke and musician John Sampson. In the style of the Spice Girls or Dave Coaches, they travelled from one shore to another on their very aptly named Shore to Shore tour. Not sure what that entails? Let me show you. I joined these lexical mavericks as they arrived from Falmouth into the rather fetching city of Bath. Look how sexy it is. Sexy, sexy, sexy. And even more fetching was our event host's bookshop, the famed Mr. B's Emporium of Reading Delights on John Street, which not only has one of the most beautiful shops I've ever been in, with reading corners and personal recommendations aplenty, they also offer personal reading spas and have a bath full of books. A bath full of books. I asked top-notch bookseller Nick why they even throw events. Why not just stick to books?
You can't just sell books in the 21st century. Not that we'd want to just sell books, but you know, if you're going to survive and thrive as an independent bookshop, or even a chain bookshop, come to mention, you need to be forming a community, being part of something a bit bigger, bringing authors into the town so that they can meet their readers is one of the logical ways to do it. It helps create a buzz. On a purely commercial level, it's a great way to gain new addicts to the bookshop, you know. But there's that other thing that books are a wonderful physical thing that we thoroughly enjoy spending time with. But it's wonderful to meet the people behind them. Anyway, back to the poetry. Bath's event was in Bath Central United Reformed Church, where John serenaded the poets on stage. They were joined by guest R.V. Bailey, whose poetry was astonishing and also had a killer suit. We laughed, we cried, we laughed again. And the night ended with a really moving standing ovation and a strawberry moon. As the dawn cracked and the poetry bus was being packed, I thought I'd give the interviews a whack. I mean, there's no going back. Okay, I'm going to stop trying to write poetry before I'm sacked. Basically, we had a right old talk about poetry, what was special about it, why poetry performed live is as important as poetry on the page. Here's some clips from that.
I think poetry live, hearing a poem being read live is a whole different thing than reading it to yourself. In the way that sitting reading a sheet of music would be different to going to a concert, or in the way that looking at a palette of paints is different from going and actually seeing a painting. There's something about things being brought to life, and there's something about the theatre of the poetry performance that gives people a whole different kind of experience, and also it unlocks the poem for people, because then they go back and they've got the voice of the poet in their head.
The power that two words put together can be, or even better 3 words together, because they have meaning and tune, and then all words in the English language have many layers of meaning. Everything suggests something else. So if you put 3, 4, a line together, and you don't put any extra words in, don't add something, no buts or maybes, just that single line of loveliness. It seems to me one of the most beautiful, most musical. Poetry is music. It's language as music, and that's why I like it so much.
Poetry events that are live, where the poet is speaking, I think it's a great thing when you can hear the breath of the poet and the accent and see the poet there, because that makes the page come alive. Of course, it's always great that people hear the poem and then go away and read it as well, that they see it on a page as well, because that pays respect to the word on the page too.
What I like most is meeting the audiences and getting to know the country by travelling through it. The guest poet at each reading is kind of resetting the matrix, as it were. So I think Rosie Bailey's reading last night just unlocked such kind of joy and empathy that it inevitably affected how we all read, so it turned into a quite remarkable reading. It will be different again today because we'll have a different poet. So I've been becoming fascinated by that, how the guest poet is changing the dynamic and how we're responding to that.
I've noticed a strange thing happening with men at poetry readings recently. They often come up in tears and they say, "You've made me cry, that's moved me, you've made me cry." And there seems to be a whole, even just in the last year, there seems to be a whole difference with men going about the place weeping. It's really quite touching, young men and old men. There's something a little key seems to have been unlocked that has made a different kind of masculinity possible. So that's an interesting thing, because at a poetry reading that's even more intense probably. The way that you can measure changes that happen in society, you can probably measure them in a different way at a poetry reading, and I find that interesting.
As we arrived in Oxford, spirits were high. The lovely staff at Oxford Blackwells ushered us into St Aldate's Church, and poet Bernard O'Donoghue joined the poets on stage for a lunchtime of poetry and politics. I waved off the poets as they continued to make their way up the map, and thought about how fortunate our country is. That however high the buildings rise, however thick the fog gathers around our parliaments, our pastures, our postcodes, we still have words. And those brave enough to carry them around, to let a little light out of their rucksacks as they move from place to place, sharing them out and multiplying. Because poetry has taught me that if you spread a few of the right words, they multiply. Click below to read more about the Shore to Shore tour, or if you're not lucky enough to catch them live, you can just pretend with the absolutely stunning celebration of independent bookshops in book form. Off the Shelf, a collection of poems specially commissioned by Carol Ann Duffy. What's your favourite indie bookshop? Leave us some recommendations below and we'll see you in another book break. Lena? Yep. Somebody's taken all the cookies from my cookie jar. Don't you love cookies?